Come see me, yo, I'ma teach you how to build up wealth for your family. Not just for yourself, I'm a bestseller, a house flipper, a businesswoman, a go-getter, a big investor, a gold builder that can teach you to get richer like millions, baby. You really about to fill your savings. You about to have multiple streams to pass your children, baby. Let me teach you to get your credit on track in the long run. You'll make it all back at Catalyst and watch it all psychological black-owned firm, but we ain't all black.
Hey, what's up, everybody? What's happening, everybody? It's your girl, Constance Carter, on another exciting night, and I'm so glad to be here. And while everybody's coming in, let me adjust my seat. While everybody's coming in tonight, I just want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for tuning in every single night at 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern. While you come in, know that every time I come live, this is a dialogue and not a monologue. Hey, Robin. So what I want to know from you, and I see you guys getting in, I'm seeing thousands of folks coming in. What I want to know is where you're from. You're coming in, where you from? I know we have people that watch from all over the place, from South Africa, from Chicago, from North Carolina, from New York. Where are you from? So go ahead and state your name and where you're from, because we want to know who we're talking to. Again, like I said, this is a dialogue and not a monologue. So make sure that you just continue to tap in, continue to engage with us like you do every single night. What's up, Robin? T. Winfrey, HBCU Queen, what's happening? LeVar from Chicago, Nicole, what's happening? TC from Philadelphia, hey, listen, you guys, it's going down over here in my neck of the woods. So in case you didn't know, I live in a town, a city called Stockton, California. G-Rock is from Compton. Davis, California is in the building. What's up? St. Paul, Minnesota, what's happening? I live in a town called Stockton, California. You may have heard about Stockton, California. Back in 2008, Stockton was when we had the foreclosure crisis, Stockton was the capital, the foreclosure capital in this country. So a lot of the foreclosures happened, but we were number one in foreclosures. We're the 13th largest city in California, the 62nd largest city in the entire country. In 2012, Stockton hit the news because they were the largest city that had filed bankruptcy. So, you know, the previous administrations had just ran Stockton into the ground. In 2012, they were bankrupt. Forbes ranked them the 8th most miserable city. We were ranked 10 most dangerous city in America. We were ranked, our literacy, we were number 3 in literacy in the country. And this is a population of over 300,000. Second most dangerous city in California, right behind Oakland. And then a young man named Michael Tubbs came in, and he's from Stockton. And if you ever heard of him, there's a documentary called Stockton on My Mind. And it's a great documentary. It's actually coming out tonight. Stockton on My Mind is a documentary on HBO, and they're going to be following Michael Tubbs. He was one of the youngest mayors in the country. He graduated from Stanford University. He worked at Google. He worked at the White House. And when he was 21 years old, he decided he wanted to come back to Stockton. Now, most people, you know, if you see all these statistics, most people who actually get a chance to leave Stockton, they leave Stockton for good. I'm not originally from Stockton. I'm actually from San Jose, but I moved to Stockton in my early 20s when I wanted to buy a house because it was affordable here. I simply couldn't afford a house in San Jose, which is Silicon Valley, which I probably still can't afford a house to this day. So Stockton was a logical place for us to buy a house. Just got married, just had a baby, just bought a house. And here we are. We've been able to build quite a pretty good life here. I own Catalyst Real Estate Professionals, which our headquarters is in Stockton. We have other offices in other areas, but we're the largest African-American owned real estate firm in California, right here in Stockton. So we've been able to make some really great strides, really promote home ownership, try to close the wealth gap, do some really great things in Stockton to promote the health of Stockton. So in 2013, Michael Tubbs, he was elected one of the youngest city council members, like at 21. He decided to leave, come back to Stockton after working in the White House, after working at Google, to help because his cousin got murdered and he wanted to make a difference. And then a few years later, he decided to run for mayor in Stockton. And again, watch the documentary Stockton on My Mind. He decided to run for mayor. So when he took on Stockton has just came out of bankruptcy. After he got elected, he brought funding from, you know, a lot of Silicon Valley investors. He's the one that was on the forefront of universal basic income, which gave lower to middle income class $500 discretionary funds to spend how they wanted to use it. He brought Advanced Peace, which one of the brothers that's going to talk to us tonight it has been is directing that program, which has reduced crime. When he left office, so what happened? So what ended up happening is he ran for re-election last year, and they voted him out. They voted this young brother out, and it was really a smear campaign of fake news. So we have a fake news station here equivalent to Fox News in Stockton. It's called 209 Times. And with all of their lies and all of the smears, they were able to successfully get this young brother out after he had brought millions of dollars here, helped with jobs, reduced crime. And when he left office, Stockton was the fourth most fiscally healthy city in the nation after filing bankruptcy. Okay. And all of these people, and I had to school my son's friends the other day because they were saying how much they didn't like him, but they didn't know why they didn't like him. They just knew what they had heard from these news sources like 209 Times. And so he worked to bring UC system to UC schools to Stockton, and just to reduce or to increase the literacy rate. Just so many things that he'd done that really helped Stockton. And I think Stockton kind of shot itself in the foot, and they ousted him. They didn't reelect him. They voted somebody, which nobody still have heard. We have a new mayor. And I have not even heard from this man. I don't know anything that he's doing. I don't know what his plans are for the city. He's now been the mayor for a couple of months, and nobody's heard from him. Nobody heard a plan. He doesn't have a plan in place. But all they know is they got out this young brother who was actually on the move doing things to help the city of Stockton. And then here we are today, where there was some news, and folks were in an uproar because the school district had adopted a resolution to change the name of Black History Month to Indigenous People Month. Hello. I think Indigenous People Month is in like November or October. So they decided arbitrarily that they were going to change the name of Black History Month to Indigenous Peoples Month. And so it was all over Facebook, and people were mad and pissed and upset and all of those things. And but I think this is the result of what you have when you want to out somebody who's doing well. It's kind of like what happened with Obama, right? When Obama left office, it put a bunch of racists on the forefront, and Donald Trump happened. And so the same thing is kind of happening on a micro scale here in the city of Stockton. After you have Michael Tubbs, who was actually endorsed by Oprah Winfrey. He was endorsed by Obama, and Obama doesn't endorse mayors, but he was endorsed, and he did some great things in the city. And people were mad, and there was a lot of racial undertones that got this man put out of office. And here we have the city of Stockton, which two of my kids are in school in this district. They changed the name of Black History Month, which they're saying this is now an option, whether the kids want to learn it or not, to Indigenous People Month. So I brought some folks together to talk about this, because this is crazy. It's important, and a lot of people are outraged. But I want to get some opinions of a lot of folks in the community. And so let's bring them on, Charles. And actually, Charles, I want you to get in on the conversation too, because I think you would be a great contributor to the conversation. So let's come on, everybody. We have Nuri Muhammad, Charles Stewart, Charles Johnson, and Miss Nicole Tobias Cooks. Now, I first learned about this resolution through Nicole. So, Nicole, what do you know about this? You're muted, Nicole. Nicole, you still muted.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Okay,
great. So I saw the post yesterday. Early yesterday. And at first I was just going to skip over it. However, I knew pretty much everyone that was on there. So when I read it, I was just like speechless, like, oh my God, like, are you serious? And then as I continue to keep reading it, I was just like, whoa, like, is this a joke? Like, I thought it was a joke. And then I inboxed the young lady that had posted, and she was like, no, it's not a joke. This is serious. Like, they really try to change the name from Black History Month to Indigenous People Month. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's in November. That's like November. I don't
Yeah.
understand. So then, as I kept going through the comments and kept reading the comments, and pretty much all of these people that I knew in the comments, I knew that they were not going to lie. I knew that they were not going to make this up. And so at that point, it was just like, okay, listen, I have a big audience. I know a lot of people. I'm going to go ahead and just post it, not only on my page, but I'm going to post it on Black Stockton and other outlets where Black people congregate as well. And then it just kind of took a life form of its own. And I've just been tagging people back and forth. And then when you offered to do a panel, I was just so happy because a lot of the Black leaders actually saw this and did not respond. And one of the Black leaders actually made a little sarcastic joke about it. And I was like, really? Like, really? So I just want to say thank you, Constance, for jumping on this right away and for giving light to this. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. So Charles Stewart, tell me what you know about it.
Like I was saying, well, with the scenario playing out the way that it did, from what I've seen, it's something that's being proposed, and that luckily, it's not something that the process can be circumvented. And so it seems like, to me, it just really just seems like this is a topic of discussion. Yet another, I personally know the brother Raymond Zuleta, and I believe that, this is him getting us to talk about something that is important. And here, once again, when we applaud, the leadership of Mayor Tubbs, here we have another young Black brother that's on a political scene. And whether we agree with what he's bringing to the forefront or not, I think the fact that he's getting us talking about something is important during Black History Month, other than the same narrative, is something that we got to focus on. And I myself, I don't agree with the tactic per se, with the circumvention of, our leadership within Stockton. And that goes to the other part where we have individuals that are coming on the scene and are able to immediately come and, disrupt what we have going on. So you have that, but then also, like I'm saying, I don't agree with what he's talking about. I identify as indigenous. I don't identify as Black or African American. I am indigenous. I am Native. And that's the part we're sad that because of this false narrative that's being talked about every Black History Month, these are the topics of discussions that end up being a shock something. And we shouldn't be shocked by what's being talked about. We are indigenous. And so by accepting a more original term, that brings us more in line with what we should be focused on, but then what the enemy constantly has us focused on. So that's my take on it. So,
all right. What about you, Brother Nuri?
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for the invitation.
I'm glad you came.
I've always wanted to participate in your show. I think it's a great show. It's a great topic, right on time. I don't know much about the proposal in Stockton School District, but there's a lack of Black history being taught in Stockton schools and schools all over the country anyway. I, for one, am always going to be a Black man. I understand what you're saying, Brother Charles, and those people that were here in the Americas, Central and North and South America. They are indigenous to this land, but it is an attempt, and he might be well-intended. He's a good young brother, I'm sure, and really might be good intended. But there's a saying that said the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We got to be really, really careful when we begin to disregard the struggle of Black people in America and how we fought just to be called Black. We eliminate all of the civil rights movement, all the revolutionary movements. We disregard really the life of the whole Black Panther Party, Nation of Islam. We undercut Malcolm. We undercut all of our leaders who fought to be able to describe themselves as Black. He cannot by himself come up with an initiative of something to call all of Black America. You can't do that. And then there's always, we don't know where it came from. There's always a hidden hand at play, trying to disregard Black people in general. And this is the time period. This is the backlash of the Barack Obama era carried on, and also the backlash of the Michael Tubbs era. this is the backlash. This is what you get. Even though we do have a black mayor, and I don't want to disrespect him at all. He is black, and that's for certain. But more palatable to certain populations of people in a city like Stockton and the surrounding city. So that's what I would have to say. You have to be very careful.
Yeah.
Especially in a city that is growing browner every day.
Right.
Yeah. People want you to invest in your future and the future that's coming up, because it doesn't look like them. So that's what I think.
That's good. All right, Brother Charles Johnson, what are your thoughts?
I wholeheartedly support what Brother Nuri is saying. Personally, I'm diametrically opposed to the idea of this concept for the same reasons that he said. I think having such a concept, it diminishes the work. And it took us a long time to get to this point. And I'm not going to say that it's disrespectful, but it doesn't honor the work that has been done. And I think we have to be careful about titles and about how we choose to change different things, primarily because I feel like what will happen in the long run of this is that the history of African Americans and Black people in America will then become null and void. And the more we talk indigenous, we'll start to lose the fervor and the grit of what we've been in this country. And we know throughout history, you know, when you start to change things like that, when you start to change language, things get lost. We've seen that in many other instances. And the story and the narratives always get changed and they lose their power. And my fear with us changing this to this idea of being indigenous in America is that we will lose the power and the efforts that have been put forward.
That's good. You know, when you talk about changing the language, you know, when the civil rights movement hit, it was for Black people, and then women took over. And now it seems to be a movement for the LGBT. And now Black people just, we no longer are able to take advantage of civil rights. So when you take away things like this, or when you change the languaging, just like you said, Charles, then it does something different, and then it waters down, and it takes away from the movement. As you said, brother Nuri, all of the fight, all of the history that we've put into play. Now you're making it more palatable for other people to be able to accept. But at the end of the day, we put in the work, so we should be celebrated. And so, Brother Pismo, you just logged on, so thank you for joining us. And we're talking about this whole idea of changing Black history to Indigenous People Day, which the city of Stockton proposed. What's your thoughts behind that?
Well, of course, I'm against it. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Sorry, I had to come on a little bit later.
We're good.
Yeah, that was, so I actually had a talk with a couple of the board members from Stockton Unified School District. And, you know, it seemed like that the original, it's a little bit of a confusing situation, because one person says originally somebody else was the one who proposed the idea, but someone else adopted it and kept going on with it. That person, who is Trustee Zulueta, said that he got the buy-in from the NAACP, Bobby Bivens, and some other people. And I think they had to go back and do some revisions on it after it was presented on February 9th. The only revisions that I saw was pretty much the title and one other section in the proposal that had Indigenous versus African American. It wasn't as much of a revision as I think he made it sound like, but it seems like he's pushing that notion. But with that being said, it was very confusing because it basically got adopted back to what it originally was in the first place, which was African American. But it still needs to be addressed, because anyone who even attempts to try and change it to, you know, something such as Indigenous, that just takes away from the value of Black History Month. And we have to bring that subject, you know, bring this matter up and address it so it won't happen again. Because actually, if the community wouldn't have spoke up, it could have possibly got pushed through. So it's a good thing that we did speak up, whether some people think it's a small thing or not. It's important.
You know, when you said that that the board member said that the president of the NAACP approved, I was just talking to a board member of the NAACP today, and she said she just finished working with Mr. Bivens, and they drafted a letter in response to this mess that should be released later on today. So I don't know that they were working with Mr. Bivens on, or he approved it. I don't think that the NAACP would approve or would buy into changing the name to Black History. So they changed the name from Black History to African American History. Does that make a difference for anybody?
No.
That makes a big difference for me.
Yeah.
Yes, and I just wanted to say real quick, sorry, Brother Muhammad, happy birthday to you, by the way.
Thank you.
My husband is indigenous, okay? My husband's name is Juan. He is third generation Native, okay, and Jamaican. My sister-in-law is 10 generation Native American. And I've showed my sister-in-law this and my husband is this, as to speak on behalf of being Native, having actual Native blood from this country. And they both said it's very insulting to them to even have someone try to indoctrinate another cultural into theirs. I am not indigenous. My people came from an African slave ship, and I am proud of that. And other people go and say, oh, I'm Black Hebrew too. Well, I'm Black Hebrew too because of my father. My name is Tobias. So Jewish Black, there you go. Hey. But I think it is very, very insulting to change it to African American, because the point is African American is an ethnic and a nationality. Black is our cultural. And we were not always African Americans, because before the 14th Amendment, we weren't even considered citizens. So if we talk about Black history, we have to talk about all of the Black history since our ancestors first put their foot on this soil from the African slave ship, okay? So in order for us to embrace our culture, it is a Black culture. African American is something that you just check off in the box. It's something that identifies you as far as citizenship. So yes, I was very, very offended. And that's why I just went on Rampage of posting it and speaking out and tagging people, because how dare you change something that belongs to us? And what give you the audacity to even have this type of conversation?
So I text Michael Tubbs to asked him to be on here tonight. And he said he had a conflict. He said, Constance, you know, I'm pro Constance, but I have a conflict of interest. But he said the person who actually proposes is actually Black. Can you believe that? And I was like, what? This is it's just getting crazy, because I don't know who this trustee member is. Is he the one that ousted?
I know. Yes, and I've had many conversations with him before in the past, and it was no surprise to me at all that he was quote unquote for this. And I'm just gonna leave it like that.
Somebody said he wasn't African American, and I just saw that on one of the comments. Somebody said he told people that he wasn't African American. Is that true? I just saw that on one of the posts. I don't know him. So
I know him.
Okay.
I know him when he identifies folks.
Say that one more time. Charles Stewart.
I was saying that I know him and he identifies as indigenous.
He does.
Yes, he does. He does. And that's the part where I think this is a really good point of conversation in so-called Black History Month. And no disrespect to all of the trailblazers of different generations, but the thing that's very interesting, this is a fight that it has nothing to do with race or color. And that's the part where, you know, me specifically, what civil rights means to me, and as I'm picking up the torch, right, for what this is my fight now. I'm a young man, and how I choose to identify, and you got people LBGQT and all these different things that didn't exist when I was younger. The thing that's ironic about it is that, like, as I'm picking up this fight and I'm pushing forward, whatever we're using to rally us in this fight, to me is helpful. And the thing that's sad about this whole conversation too is that Black has not given us power in America. African American hasn't given us power in America, right? And so I don't understand what is the point of having a label that so far has not led us to victory as a people. Whatever label that we've been championing clearly is not the right name because it ain't rallied us, right? So for me, in our generation, in our time right now, of course, but I just want to say that I'm saying from us getting to victory, we have not won. So whatever name we continue to go for, if it galvanizes, and I'm talking about the people that are fighting, and for some reason, this to me, indigenous, it connects me with all of my people all over on this side, right? On this side, and when we start talking about the history of the people of this country, I believe that us like not tapping into that is the problem. These people over here, right? The natives that were here to this land, to me, were the most rebellious out of all of them. And it's in their duty to fight these people over here. And I believe that because we have not gotten further to our call to the root of why we're in this position, because our enemies constantly defining us, we haven't been able to be successful yet. But I personally am thankful. Once again, I've never been on a call with Brother Nuri. I've never been on a call with Brother Charles. I've never been on a call with you, Sister Constance. Thank you. My brother Pismo and my sister Nicole, right? And it's bringing us together to have a talk about this. These are the things to me that are important, and all of our opinions on it is important. But with us moving forward, to see the perspective of each person, going back to me saying, I know the brother personally, and he identifies as indigenous. He got voted in under, I don't know how he got voted in, but I'm saying it clearly seems to be a political ploy to put a Black face or one of our Latin or Latino brothers' face there and use this as, for a storyline. But then the whole time, we as a so-called Black community, so-called African-American community, are not tapping in with these different leadership and these different positions and knowing their power of them. And so someone who's identifying as indigenous, if you do identify as Black, how does this person get in a position of power, right, to be able to even cause this uproar? And so that's all I got to say again.
Okay. Charles, you have a response to that?
Yeah, I think to your point a little bit, Brother Stewart, I think when we say that it doesn't speak to race and it doesn't speak to a lot of other things, I think historically it does. And that's the part that we have to acknowledge, that the transition from all the things that we were to being called Black or African American had a lot to do with race, had a lot to do with a lot of different things that we have dealt with historically that have allowed us to even propel to this point of being called Black and or African American. And I do think that being the term African American is just another move forward from where we were. So I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'm not opposed to it either. Secondly, with regards to indigenous, I don't think at this point it has great clarity to it or definition to use in this structure, right? I think it's not defined well enough to even begin to have that conversation. Not enough people can recognize it. It's not identifiable enough to even start that conversation of being called indigenous. We haven't, as a culture, defined what indigenous is, what that means to us, and how we will move forward with it from the historical perspective of it. How do we relate the story of James Baldwin, or like Brother Nuri said, the Black Panthers? How do we relate their stories to being indigenous when they called themselves Black? Or how do we relate the story of the NAACP and all the things that they went through, even from the Niagara movement? How do we identify that as indigenous when we first called it Black? It kind of, it doesn't correlate the way that it should at this point. And so that's a part of my problem with it.
What do you guys say, Brother Muhammad?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I would agree with Brother Charles. We can't let people come up with new terms for us. At first, white people used to call us colored. They called us Negroes, and then colored. And colored was an advancement from being niggers and Negroes. And then now the new term is, we call ourselves Black. That was a move in the 60s. It was a term of empowerment because we identified ourselves for the first time ever. We identified ourselves on our own means. And then later on in sociological circles, someone came up with the term African American. For me, that's watered down. My history stretches past America, past being quote unquote African. Yes, our people were in the continent now called today Africa, but what was it before Africa? What was the name of it before that? What was the name of the land even before there was such a thing to call it Africa? You know, when I went to Egypt, they don't necessarily refer to themselves as African in the normal sense. They refer to themselves as Cushites or Nubians in the deepest heart of Egyptian, the original indigenous Egyptian. They consider themselves black. That's what Kush means. Kush means black. Nubia means black. All of these names mean black. So when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that we were the original black people of the planet Earth, he wasn't wrong. Some people try to change it, and it doesn't matter what your religion is, whether it's you're a Hebrew or Muslim or whatever. Your cultural lens, your family lens, which is a global one. I mean, we are people that have a 50,000-year history in that landmass, but we got a 66 trillion year history in this whole universe itself. We are the mothers and fathers of every single color. It all springs out of being black, and then that's just my particular lens as a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And that's the lens I look for. I don't want anybody to come up with a term for me and my people and our struggle here. Indigenous just doesn't cut it enough for me. Not strong enough a word for me. So,
you know what's so funny is what you said, and it's funny because I actually wore this shirt today, which was actually by accident. But this shirt that I have on, which you may not be able to see it, but basically, it's one of my shirts. I have a little T-shirt line, but it says these are all the names that were given to people in my family. My grandmother, on her birth certificate, she was mulatto. My parents. My dad was colored. My mom was Negro. No, my mom and dad were colored on their birth certificate. My brother was a Negro. He was born in 1968 in Arkansas. I was black. My children are African American. But at the end of the day, we're all just human. And it's like we allow people to give us these names. And you're right, Brother Muhammad. You know, we fought hard for these names. These names are ingrained in our blood, especially African American or black. I think that when you talk about Brother Charles, that indigenous is stronger, or African American or black hasn't done anything for us. Well, what do you think indigenous will do for our people? How is that going to change who we are? What is that going to do?
Well, what I'm pointing to is the fact that, and there seems to be a disconnect between older generations and the old thought and the new wave of thought. And I'm not disagreeing nor disrespecting. I myself am a student of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And when it comes to what I've seen as I went into the teachings and applied them to my life, I'm looking for unification. And so for myself, me personally, once again, you know, my family comes from Oklahoma and from Texas. And what's happened is that my identity got lost inside of this black experience, right? And so I've had the black experience. So trust me, you can't strip that of me, right? At this point, there's nobody that can strip my black experience. What has actually happened is I went further into my understanding. It's made me want to go back to my roots. My family's Blackfoot Indian, out of the Oklahoma area. So as we're talking about these things, and I myself personally going back to how our people have been all swept into one pile of something. And what's kind of funny is that we're not having a problem with people doing these ancestry.com things and finding out exactly where they're coming from. So as people are coming and finding out what they actually are and going closer to that, that's just my piece on it. That's my take on it. I'm literally trying to advance what I see. Once again, I'm not in agreement with his tactic. I mean, I believe, like you said, I myself can't know why he did what he did. Politics has become a big game, you know, and as people are coming in, they're attacking things that are in place. And for me, I have respect for my elders, and I myself am not in a controversy. But when I see someone doing this, I prefer coming from our own community to get us talking than what's been going on constantly as these white people keep throwing these little hotbed topics in our community and we respond to it. To me, this is one more along the lines of what a Black history conversation should be about, the different perspective of the so-called Black experience, the so-called African American experience. But when we come together and we decide what we're going to be, and when we hear one another out, and we're able to see the different perspectives, and that it takes our different perspectives to finally defeat this enemy. Once we finally come together, man, the power will lie with us. But up until now, no name is giving us power, and that's what I'm saying, and that's what these young people are saying. And at the end of the day, that's why they're rioting it. And a lot of these old heads can't get it, is because it ain't no power. Like, Black ain't had no power. Like, I mean, it ain't nothing that freed me. Black ain't stopped these folks. Still right now, I'm impressed by the police. Black ain't stopping it. That's not helping. You know what I mean? These titles are not helping. And so I'm like, can we find one that's going to unite us and finally get us to freedom? If it ain't that, please, I don't want to hear it, because, like I said, when I've been in the streets, ain't none of these titles available. If I was the police, I carry a title that would do something. But it's sad that the so-called title Black or African American has not struck fear in the hearts of our youth. We just died. Like, that's how I feel. You know what I mean? Like, as these young people are trying to find something to galvanize behind, as they're trying to find something to galvanize behind and fight for something, like I said, I'm glad that this is a part of the conversation, because we can finally decide what we're going to be. We haven't decided something of power yet, so.
Okay. Brother Nuri?
Yes. According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, indigenous, of or relating to the earliest known inhabitants of a place, and especially of a place that was colonized by a now dominant group. Indigenous is not a word that I want to be called. I have to stretch past the colonizer.
My point. We're missing my point.
Hold on, I need to mute somebody. Everybody mute your. Because we're getting some feedback from somewhere. I'm not sure from where, but everybody mute yourself except for the person that's talking.
Yeah, indigenous is not a strong enough word. If we
I think you got.
Can I say something?
But I think to his point, though, indigenous is not a strong enough word, and that's something that we got to deal with in reality. And second, to your point, Brother Stewart, we don't know what indigenous would do for us either. And so we're making a very large assumption that if we galvanize, that we will have any additional power. I don't think the power or the lack thereof is based on a word. I think it's been a distraction, or not really a distraction, but I think our color has been the issue, not what we've been called. And so I don't think that adopting a new word will change that reality. I think we have to honestly go back and figure out, how do we change that particular narrative in terms of what we're dealing with, why we're dealing with it, and how. I don't think being classified differently will change that, unless we're classified as white. That's just my opinion of it. But I don't think being called indigenous is really going to change that narrative at all. And we have to just deal with the reality of, and speak to the power that is, and do it in a way that allows us to be progressive, allows us to create the change. And we're on that path to some large degree. I would say this also. I do feel like at some point we do have to go ahead and start to unify ourselves collectively under one umbrella. I don't know that indigenous is the way to do that, because we are more than indigenous, like Brother Nuri said. But we do have to deal with that and then begin to structure our power based around that. I wholeheartedly support that idea and that collective. And I think that that's a part of even this platform here, just being able to have these courageous conversations and be able to deal with the realities of who we are, what we are, and why we exist. Creating new things, it just adds something new to the pot. It doesn't change, too much of anything. The flavor is going to change a little bit and all that other kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the ingredients thereof are still there, and we have to fix that, right? So we have to deal with these people from the perspective of, it doesn't matter what you call us, we're humans. And that's the thing that you have a problem with, is our color and our humanity. And we have to deal with that. And we have to press them on that issue, not whether you call us indigenous, whether you call us Black, whether you call us African American or any other name. You know, respect me. I don't really care what you call me. Respect me. Respect my people and the people that look like me. Give us the same equity and opportunities that you do everybody else. That's what I really care about. You're muted, Constance.
We can hear you.
I was saying, brother Nuri, can you hear me? Somebody said that the enemy has cut off the great minister because he was speaking the truth. That's what somebody said in the comments. So I want you to finish what you were saying. Finish your point.
I don't know if it was the enemy or just my internet service, bootleg internet service. Either one, we can blame it on him. It was just so. I was just saying that you know, the word indigenous is not a new word, and I don't think the native peoples to this land would refer to themselves as indigenous in their original state. I mean, it disregards the Choctaw people. It disregards the Cherokee people. It disregards all of these people and just melts them into one so they could do away with their history all at one time. And then we include quote unquote Black people or whatever you want to call us into the indigenous. It also takes away all of our history. And I'm not just talking about the history in our sojourn here in America. That's 400 years, mind you. 400 years of a falling away. But we're way older than 400 years. We're older than 6,000 years. Timbuktu was a thriving university 10,000 years ago, before there was even a hint of white people on the planet Earth. Universities all over.
800,000.
Yeah. So we have to look at our history from a global viewpoint and be able to connect with our people all over. And that's what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was taught to use the term Black for, because it connected our struggle here in America with the people that were brought here in the hulls of ships. It connected us to a whole world that was in Africa, no doubt, but it's also throughout the Middle East. It's all throughout the whole landmass, is all throughout the entire world, and made us brothers and sisters with everyone else in the planet Earth. And that's why he used the term Black. And that's what empowered us in the 60s. We may not feel that we're empowered today, but you got to remember, the enemy did come in after the Civil Rights Movement, after the Black Panthers, and after their attack on the Black Panthers and the Nation of Islam and other Black organizations. They began to rewrite the narrative of our history, and part of that is changing the name. And they're still changing the name right now. They're still making operate. I don't know where the brother got the idea to change it. If he's really, from among Black people, and I believe that he is, but
That's Black.
You can't disregard our forward movement as a people that were rooted in that era of time period. Is too very important for our rise right now.
Well, I don't understand how he unilaterally decided, because he identifies as indigenous, that it was okay for a whole month to be changed to indigenous, because he does. Because what percentage of Black folks, even in Stockton, identify as indigenous? So how, just because I identify as, I could identify as a cactus, and because I identify as that, how am I going to change something that historically is something else? The other thing that you said, to your point, Charles, you said, indigenous the indigenous people are powerful, and it brought me back to what I read in the history books. The reason why they couldn't enslave the indigenous or the Native Americans is because they weren't as strong as the Africans. They would get sick. They got diseases. They died under those conditions. And the reason why they were able to put us in those positions is because we were strong. We were able to withstand harsh conditions. So we've come from a very strong lineage. And so I don't think that calling us indigenous is actually giving us any more power or strength. I think who we are as descendants of Africans, I think that gives us power, and I think that gives us strength. That's just my own 2 cents. And I was getting ready to ask.
I love being I'm not on purpose, but I'm saying in a shock value time, this is the time for shock value. And if you can get people talking about something and weighing in, you can move them towards something. So once again, I myself will never, ever, ever feel I have the right to speak for any other human being, let alone another Black person, because that, like, their struggle and story inside of this American culture, I mean, we would like to believe that it's something of unity now. And if we want to talk about, people unifying under Black labels and African American things, and I'm not trying to talk about it in a way that's disrespectful. I'm just saying it has not led to power. And so they've taken it and watered it down, and it's just been a horrible experience for any Black person in this culture. So forgive me if me connecting with something within that's in my experience, do I personally find power, right? As being, like I said, this is my family's rights, and they took these rights from me as an indigenous person to this land, right? By them labeling me Black, and I was not aware of this. So that's my Black experience. So as I'm coming into this awareness of myself, and you have other people that are coming into that awareness as well, right? Who's stronger or not, and all these different things that we make ourselves feel good by saying the perfect words that seem to have magic over our souls, but our lives we're in hell, right? So forgive me if I want to try to find something that I can rally with some other people to try to find some real power. And over here in North America, indigenous connects us with our Azteca brothers. Like that's the part that's throwing me off. I mean, and I do agree with Brother Nuri. As far as I do accept the language of original, I do get the fact that it's connecting us with our Black brothers and sisters all over the planet. But what's sad is I believe that our cultural sins, our spiritual sins, our tribal sins cannot be resolved if we don't find out who we are. So I really believe, for me personally, looking at like the different things that my family may have got into with the original native culture here, it helps me to start thinking about the sins of how these people fell away. So if I'm indigenous, if I'm Black, whatever I identify with, if I'm a child of God, me and my family have generational curses that are coming from my lineage. So if I can connect with that personally and try to figure out how that is affecting my family and what we're going to do moving forward, I just don't see anything wrong with it from a concept standpoint. Not, once again, not wiping away all the groundwork of our forefathers. I stand on the shoulders of the work that they did. But I'm saying as we begin to like press towards a label, and once again, I'm not, trust me, I agree, indigenous has to be we. It's been dominated, of course. Africans, because they were able to be, first of all, I think it's sad that some people that were spiritually in tune, right, with themselves could not allow themselves to be dominated by these white people. But so-called Black slaves, right? And that's what I'm saying. I don't want to go back and forth with the comparing, but I'm like, they were more broke. And because they were more broke at that time, right, they're still stubborn. They're still holding on to something that's dead. It's dead. It hasn't evolved. And so as we're trying to evolve and to experience what God has for us, please let us at least keep having conversations like this, because I don't care about the label, man. I want to be a child of God that's free. Like that's what I'm going for. But I'm just trying to find my way back to the truth, and if a label gets me in a conversation with my brother that sparks off truth in today, that helps us evolve to freedom, please, man, like show me that label. I just want to be free.
So let me ask you, Brother Pismo. And if you guys could mute yourselves. We're talking about labels. Why are we still in 2021 still arguing over what we are supposed to be called? Is it important? Should it be important? Is that a factor? What's your thoughts around that? Because that's what we kind of stuck there.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a factor. Identity is everything, and people identify in different ways. I come from the Gullah culture. My father and my father's family is completely Geechee Gullah, so I'm actually half Gullah. And we used to, my father used to get teased for the way he talked, and my family talked. He served in the military, and he had to change the way that he spoke. Unfortunately, to go further in his career in the military back in those days, the 40s and the 50s, and lose the dialect a little bit. But if you know anything about the Gullah Geechee culture, that's what's happening out there right now. There's basically gentrification is taking over. So people within, the African American or Black culture in America identify different ways. You have the Creoles, you have all kind of different people who, they do that, and how Brother Muhammad was saying, within the indigenous nations, they identify certain ways as well. You just can't say indigenous. So, you have to respect that. Some people are fine with that. You have some indigenous people that don't like to be called that. They like to be called Native Americans. You actually have some Native Americans who will call themselves Indians, which I think is not the best thing to do, but they will call themselves that. So, to each their own. I'm not really, going to judge anybody for what they identify with, because that's their prerogative. But to get back to what this all stems from, did any of you have the chance to read the resolution at all? Because, okay, I think a lot of the confusion comes in with a certain section within that resolution that talked about Crispus Attucks, and there was some, from what I understand, and please don't quote me on this, there was some verbiage in there that was not correct in the sense of how he identified, or I guess he's being identified in this day and age. He's not just African American. It has been there's been some clarification with that with Crispus Attucks, that he's actually half African American, half indigenous. So I think that's where the topic first came up, was to get some clarification on that verbiage. And in the process of that, there were other things slipped in with the whole indigenous thing. I think after it was reviewed, there was a revision that had to take place because of that. And that's how this whole thing came about. Apparently the section talks about some type of California education code that I guess March 5th or something like that has to do with Crispus Attucks Day. And that's within that resolution. So it's very confusing. I still hear the confusion amongst everybody, how they're talking, like, how did he even come to this? That's the I think the catalyst of how it started. So, it would be great to get some transparency with the Stockton Unified School District Board members. From what I understand, there's been some attempts to have transparency by some of the board members, but they've been completely shut down by the majority time and time again. I don't know if any of you have been able to even tune in on some of these Stockton Unified School District Board meetings, but it's an absolute circus show. So, this is why I say the community has to get involved. Like, we can sit here and talk about this all day, but when it really comes down to it, the majority of the people, the Black community, they have to get more involved, so these type of small nuances don't slip through, the cracks. And then we have something going out that we all don't really, I think we collectively can say we don't want to happen. I'm looking at the comments and people are appalled by just the idea of it coming up. So as long as we stay involved, that won't happen. But I think, everyone needs to get more involved in Stockton in particular, with the school district, the city council, all these type of things, because if you're not paying attention, trust me, they know it and they'll try and slip it.
So Nicole, I know you said you had a problem with it being changed over from Black to African American history. Is it because it limits the history of our people? Like, why do you say that? And you're me. Go.
Well, I think, like I said, African American is our nationality. Black is our culture. It's who we are as a culture, as a collective of people. Regardless of what you call yourself, you're still a Negro in this country, period. And so I was raised in Oakland, California, and I come from an era where you are proud to be Black, period. And that's how I raise my children. I come from a biracial father. I have come from a whole bunch of different diversity. However, I label myself as Black, as an African descendant. So to change the name to African American, and let's be clear, African American didn't start until when? Was it like, what, 1998 or I didn't look it up, but I think it was like 1998 or 2000 when they actually started African American, made it legal for us to become African American. So if you say that, then you're going to disregard all of the history that has been here in this country. So that's why when I saw this and I read this, I was just like, wow, this is amazing to me. I don't care if you are half indigenous, half whatever, you're still of African descent, period. And there's no way that you can just label that because of how you feel personally. You're not elected into office or any position based on your personal things. You're elected to do what is right for the people. So just to even change that was just disrespectful for me. And so it should just continue to be Black history, period. Since 1986, it's been Black history.
You know, I love that we're having this dialogue because, you know, again, Stockton is a microcosm of what's going on in America. You have the effects of having a Black administration like Obama. Now here we had Michael Tubbs. And so there are thousands of people that are viewing right now. So for those of you who just logged on, we're talking about the city of Stockton, California. We had one of the youngest Black mayors in the country who came in when Stockton had just came out of bankruptcy, was highest on the lowest on the literacy chart, was named most miserable city, Forbes most miserable city. He came in and him and along with a bunch of other great leaders in the city council and lots of funds, brought in lots of funds from the Silicon Valley. A lot of investors came in. They started programs like Advanced Peace, which Brother Nuri right here is the director of. And how much has crime declined since you've started Advanced Peace? Can you tell us a little bit about that, Brother Nuri?
Crime in general, I really don't deal with crime in general. I deal with gun violence in particular.
Gun violence, okay.
I think when Mayor Tubbs brought up the initiative to bring Advanced Peace to the city, because it was in Richmond, California, and then Sacramento. Stockton was the third city. I think that year that it came in, it was, I believe, 57 murders. Last year was a difficult year with COVID. I think we're at 54 murders citywide. But among our people, Black and brown young people, what they call quote unquote gang violence, but you have to be careful with the numbers. Because when you look among that population really had decent numbers. Even though there were things that happened, they had decent numbers for the year. But the age groups of the population that were affected by gun violence were the ages of most drastically were the ages of 45 and older. So these are people that feel stress, anxiety, uncertainty with the society and COVID-19. I mean, there are 393 million guns in America, enough to supply every man, woman, and child with weapons, with many, many millions of guns left over. So when you have that many guns being made in America, and the government itself is the greatest purveyor of guns, the greatest maker and producer of guns in the whole entire world, those guns trickle down into society, into little cities. Stockton ain't necessarily a little city, but it trickles down into cities like Stockton and everywhere else. So our young people don't make the guns. They don't import the guns. They may go get them from Reno, something like that, but they don't make them. They don't make Uzis. So where are the guns coming from? Who's the manufacturer? How do they get their hands on them? And how do they get into Black and brown and poor white neighborhoods that are pitted against each other already in society are questions that we're going to have to examine and look at.
I think the thing that I love, because Charles and I met with you at Advanced Peace sometime last year, and what I loved is just the idea of bringing something to reduce gun violence, just the idea of thinking outside the box. And that's the thing that I love about what that administration did for the city of Stockton. Just, hey, let's think about some ideas instead of not just more of the same thing. They did different things. They brought alternatives, and so when he left the office, Forbes ranked Stockton one of the best places to live. Go figure. From most miserable city to one of the best places to live. Fourth most fiscally sound city in the country. from bankruptcy. This young brother did this. And folks chose not to re-elect him because of a lot of fake news that was going on out there, a lot of lies, a lot of misinformation. And in the age of the internet, we have to be careful. And so then this is the result. Like Trump. Trump was a result of an Obama administration. What's going on right now with the school district and all the craziness that's happening is a result of a young Black man coming in and doing some things. And we were progressing in the right direction. Again, I haven't even seen the new mayor. How long has he been in office? I have not seen him. Within the first 30 days that Michael Tubbs was in office, I had a meeting with him. He sat down. He told me what his plan was. I tried to schedule a meeting with the other mayor, and I haven't heard anything back. So I have no idea what's going on. I know he said he doesn't have a plan, and they voted him in anyway. I have no idea why. But the beautiful thing is we are all engaging and having this conversation, because this is where the magic happens. This is where things start to happen. Is we have a dialogue first, and then we can start taking action, progressive action. So my question to all of you on the panel is, what should we do going forward to make a change? Because that's all I ever, at the end of the day, we can talk to her blue in the face, but what are we going to do to make a difference in our community? Because, I was gung-ho. I used to be like, hey, we can make a difference in Stockton, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And, I've been able to establish a really, really great business. I own the largest Black-owned real estate firm in California, right here in Stockton. I have great people that work for me, not just African-American, people from all different walks of life. So I've been able to build a great life. But then at the same time, when I see some of the stuff going on, I'm just like, damn, I give up. I want to move, it's like we take 3 steps forward and we take 5 steps backwards. So what can we do as a community to move the city forward in our progressive thinking? And anybody can answer that question.
Constance, this is Pismo. I completely share your sentiments. I lived in New York for a long time before I moved back I'm originally from Stockton, from the South Side, born and raised. And I know the frustration that you're talking about. And, Stockton is totally different in the Black community from what I remember as a child growing up. And I'm not sure if any of you other of the participants in this panel are from Stockton originally, but, we used to be so much more close in the city. You have a lot of cliques that go on, and it's just the truth. A lot of different cliques for a lot of different reasons, whether good or bad. I'm not sure, but it's just the case. When I was growing up, you would go to the Civic Auditorium by default, if you were Black, to the Martin Luther King breakfast every year. Everyone was there. Black Family Day, everyone was there. And, times have changed. It's a new generation, like Brother Stewart said, like people think differently in this generation versus the next generation. So you have all these different things to, that come into the, that play a part in why it is what it is right now. But, I think a big thing, once again, it all falls back down to transparency. You're saying you haven't seen the mayor. We need to be able to know why we haven't seen the mayor. And when we ask those questions to these elected officials, they should answer those questions. They shouldn't brush us off. They shouldn't tell us, go email the superintendent if you want to have an answer. Don't contact me certain ways for this reason and that reason. We're the constituents that voted these people into these elected offices and positions, and they should answer our questions and let us know what's going on at all times. But they're not going to do that if we don't pressure them. If we don't come together and if we don't do our part to keep the pressure on them and hold them accountable, then they're not going to do it. And that's what's been happening. People get in these cliques and they're fine within their clique, but the rest are left out in the cold, not really knowing what's going on in certain circumstances. So, I just hope that I want to give a shout out also to Families for a Better School Board. They've been the source of live streaming for the Stockton Unified School District, because they won't live stream for whatever reasons, once again. So I think if we push this transparency, that would be great. At least the city council does live stream their meetings, and people, but no one attends the meetings. So once again, we can sit up and talk, but until the community actually really starts getting involved and we start going to the meetings, whether it's streaming or once things, get back to somewhat of a norm, to the live, in front of everyone and talking, nothing's going to change. So the community has to get involved more and more. Very important.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that when I first started my business in Stockton, I connected with Tubbs, and this was when he was in District 6. And then when I started my second business in Stockton, a storefront, again, Tubbs was there. I've employed probably about close to 4 dozen people through 3 of my businesses in Stockton. And I still continue to employ people temporarily through my business now through Stockton. And so I knew of Stockton growing up from my grandmother. They used to come here and go fishing and picking. And we used to go to church here, and we knew lots of people. So when I came to Stockton, I knew a few families that was already Stocktonians. So I had the same experience as Pesmo had back then. I knew about Black Family Day as I work with Black Family Day now, because my grandmother had established a relationship with a few people with Black Family Day. And so for me, when I saw this, I immediately thought of the students that I taught at Delta College, the culinary students that I was connected with Delta College. And I'm like, wow, they see me as a Black woman owned business. That's what I am. I'm not an indigenous woman owned business. I'm a Black woman business. And that's how I wanted to represent myself. And then what about the children and how they're going to see themselves going forward? That's the real issue here. The real issue is teaching our next generation to be proud of who they are and not allow someone to gimmick them into thinking anything else. So moving forth with Stockton, for me, is still staying connected with my students, still staying connected with people in the community, and still lending a hand wherever I can, because we have to represent who we are, and that is whatever Black Stockton is. We still have, there are a few of us here that is still going to represent that. So that's how I think that we should move forward with that idea, and also holding our children in our hearts and how they're going to grow up and see themselves as well.
That's good. Who's next? Go ahead, Brother Nuri.
I was just going to say, you had mentioned that Forbes at one time saying that Stockton was one of the worst places to live in America. You have to realize that if you want to hide something, one of the best ways is to hide it in plain sight. So just the idea of Forbes for a protracted period of time saying that we were the worst city in America, but yet it was the #1 place for flips, for house flips, for you to buy a house and to flip it. Well, we couldn't be that bad off if everybody's coming here to buy houses and to flip them to make money. It is still one of the only affordable places to live in Northern California. So as the populations begin to grow and become unaffordable in San Francisco and in different places, Oakland, the gentrification that took place among Black people in these cities, and then moving out into different areas. Now after a season of where someone showed some care, now they want to classify it as one of the best places to live. But I guarantee you that you'll find less and less Black people able to be qualified for those houses that they could have qualified when it was the worst, because now those prices have jumped up and they won't be able to find them. So we're going to have to work in a collective manner to galvanize all of the intellectual people, all of the minds, in order to see what kind of economic program that can be done as a unit of people to kind of like stave off what's going to come to America in a very short while.
I like that. Brother Charles Stewart, what are your thoughts?
Well, I've had an honor to work with, 3 of the other 5 people on this call, and so I believe in the spirit of Stockton and what has been going on from the positions that we've been in. I think that we have a very, very unique opportunity coming from the Black experience within Stockton, and I think that and to me, like I said, this is a perfect example of, you know, a young ambitious person that I personally know the young brother, and him going for something, and as he's going for it, him not having the right guidance and understanding how to galvanize our community, period. Black, indigenous. Like I said, for me, I'm not really caught up in the labels, and that I want all my people that are from Stockton and are struggling in these streets. Like, and I'm not talking about in the streets literally. I'm saying in the work world, right? In the church world, it's all gully and Stockton. You know what I mean? And so I'm hoping we can find something that can galvanize us. And it is a shame that you have people that like Tough that got attacked the way that they did. That was really for our people, and we all know it. You know, all of us on this call have worked with the brother and know it. But it's a shame that he was able to be attacked like that. And now, I think the thing that not only is that a travesty, but when it comes to things like this is how these things are happening. But as we come together and we talk with one another and we be proactive rather than reactive, I believe that sends a signal, and it shows people all over the world at this point. I think we have a very unique opportunity in that when it came to, at one point, we had a black fire chief, right? We had a black chief of police and a black mayor at the same time, right? But we didn't begin to focus on having a black council member and then having a black board of supervisors. Like, we have to evolve in politics. You know, we have to evolve, and I think that Stockton, we're presented with a unique opportunity, and platforms like yours, sister. I appreciate you again for inviting me on. But these are the beginning of that, man, and that's showing us, as we have different opinions within the black community, that we can come together and really solve our collective problem. And so, yeah, I believe in it. I'm a part of the gentrification. My family was from the Bay Area, and we were pushing to Stockton. Well, but half of my family is from Stockton. Like, my family that's from Oklahoma, they settled down in the Moorefield area and have been out there forever. And so I came out in Stockton and hated it, but fell in love with the people. I mean, me personally, coming out of prison and coming to Stockton and being welcomed in from a community standpoint, it showed me not only was a struggle real, but there was a potential for us to come together because my perspective was accepted within Stockton, man, and we've been able to build. And I appreciate you all, and I look forward to the continued work, because I believe that, in my opinion, Stockton is on to something great for our black people, for our indigenous people, for us to finally be free and us focusing on economics and the power structure that's in place. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. What about you, Brother Charles?
I think it's pretty simple for me. First and foremost, I appreciate everybody on here. I know all of you guys, including you, Constant, have been really doing the work. And that's really, really important. I think for Black people in the city of Stockton, we have to learn one simple lesson, and that's to agree where we can agree and to work through our disagreements. I think once we learn how to do that effectively, we can begin to establish a coalition that will allow us to move agendas with intention, with purpose, and then have power behind them. One thing that we didn't discuss in this particular live, but needs to be a part of this topic, is that not only are we one of the most marginalized in our community, but we're also one of the smallest in numbers in the city of Stockton, which means that we have to be very, very, very strategic in how we approach situations, how we approach power, how we approach even political issues, so forth and so on. And we have to be very intentional in the things that we do. And we have to get there more sooner than later. That's been a problem for us, and that will continue to be our plight if we don't get that thing together, right? And so, and just even being a part of just the dynamics of Stockton Black leadership, being a past president of Stockton Black Family Day, you get to see all of the different dynamics at play. And there is a little bit of a bridge that needs to be built between the generations, right? But Brother Stewart, I encourage brothers like you, because you're able to speak to the younger generation. And also you've had the privilege of being under the leadership, much like myself, brothers like Brother Nuri Muhammad, Brother Tommy Muhammad, man, Brother Douglas. There's so many that have just been powerful change agents in the city that have helped us get to a place to where we are. We just have to figure that part out, though. We have to figure out that dynamic. Constance, you've done a great job, and we don't speak about it a lot, but the reality is having the largest Black African-American, I should say African-American owned real estate company in the state of California is huge. But it's not just that. It's about giving people an identification with generational wealth. And, you know, if you look at literally all of the real estate agencies in the city of Stockton, none of them are talking about that. And none of them are talking about that specifically for Blacks. And that's huge, right? Because we know that that's one of the largest places where you can start to build that generational wealth. To that point also, though, and I'll close, is that we have to work where we're best at, right? So everybody is not good in the city council meetings. Everybody's not. So we got some street soldiers out there, Brother Nuri knows, that will handle business in a moment. And if you say the word, they're a go. But they're not ready for that city council meeting because they don't know how to handle it. And I say that to say this, is that we got to start to utilize our people where they're best able to be utilized at, and stop looking at them as negative. Start looking at them as power players in this area, power players in that area. We have some great people who can speak really well. We have some that are just extremely intelligent. We have some that are street soldiers that, hey, when it's time to march, they moving, no questions asked, right? We have some that are great with politics. They understand the game, and if we hold them accountable, they can get the job done. We have to move in those areas where we're best at with intention and start to utilize each other collectively. And I think that once we get there, we'll have a strong enough coalition to be able to move the intentions of Stockton the way we need them to be moved.
Wow, I love it. Does anybody else have anything they want to add before we end this broadcast tonight? Brother Nuri?
I was just going to say, yesterday was my birthday. I don't know why Brother Charles and the other Brother Charles keep referring to me as old. I'm offended. But they are right. There is a bridge that does need to be that's one of the plans of the enemy, is to separate the young from the old, and to highlight that difference in age. The young people have the energy. They can be very intelligent, but old people have the wisdom. And until you're able to bring them together and unify them, where the young people can listen and the old people can be open-minded to some new ideas, but yet you can guide the youth with some wisdom, because there's nothing new underneath the sun, even if it's on something that an old person can't understand, like your cell phone or something like that. There's some practical wisdom into the utilization of anything. So those brothers are definitely right. That bridge needs to be gapped. And brothers like Charles, they are a bridge. I consider myself a bridge to the older and the younger, even though they consider me old. Maybe that's because I've always had a suit on since they met me. They think I'm really, really old, but I'm not that old. I follow Brother Pismo all the time. I know his career as an artist, so I'm not that old at all.
Brother Muhammad, I was gonna say, you don't got these, so you looking all right. You doing all right.
Thank you.
Listen, I've seen you in city council meetings, and you have absolutely blown my mind at Brother Muhammad. So, I mean, you are absolutely needed. To Charles's point, operating our strengths is extremely important, and knowing where they are, because everybody can't be at a school board meeting. Everybody can't be at a city council meeting, but where you are strong, if we can figure out how to exercise our strengths. And this is what I do with my team as well, as I say, listen, you work in your strengths. Don't try to strengthen your weakness. You work in your strength, and then you partner with people who have your weaknesses, who can do other things that'll strengthen you. Because there is an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you have to go together. So we need each other to survive. We need each other to push forth our community. It's imperative, or we will die. Sure. And it's simple. And so, practicing collective economics is important. Us having businesses and supporting one another. When Sister Nicole had her business, I was right there all the time, front lines, downtown, supporting her business. Any Black business in Stockton, I'm going to support, and hopefully you do the same thing with me. But we just have to start doing that, and that's the way that we can push forth our agenda. Economics. Charles, we talk about that all the time. Economics is the number one way that we can push forth our agenda. Money talks. At the end of the day, Black and white is not as important as green. If you look at what Lyndon B. Johnson said, he said, if what was his quote? He said, if you could take the poorest white man, tell him that he's better than the best black man, and he won't even know that you're picking his pockets. Hell, give him somebody to look down on, and he'll give you everything he owns. If you could take the poorest white man and tell him that he's better than the best colored man, he won't even know that you're picking his pockets. So it's not even about black and white so much. It is, but it's not. It's really about power. It's about green. And if we can come together collectively with our economics, we can push our agenda forward, and we can be so much further along. And that's what we need to do. Money is power. So thank you guys for being here today. I appreciate it. I love you guys, and we need to have more of these dialogues. Did you have something to say, Nicole?
No, I was saying, Pismo, you dissed me after Black Panther. Hit me up. I got a bone to pick with you.
Hey, I'm here. I'm very easy to reach. Very easy. But you know, it's all love. It's always love. I don't care what it is.
Thank you, guys.